entering Canada through the CBSA. We learned from the Auditor General that the report issued indicated that some resources who worked on subcontracts lacked the appropriate security clearance. As the public health agency, I would like to hear your thoughts on this.
The specific contracts that were put in place were from the Canadian Border Services Agency, and a number of resources needed to be replaced given the length of the pandemic. The security and privacy considerations related to the data that was collected were reviewed through numerous assessments, including from the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. And the report was that the measures were complied with privacy and were necessary and proportional to the tasks that needed to be implemented.
In the Auditor General's report in 2021, it stated that the quality of information collected, as well as how quickly it was collected, improved over time with the ArriveCAN app. Understanding the urgency within the context of the global pandemic, would you agree that the process of transferring from manual to digital base to collect contact and health information was needed?
The process of digitizing the information being collected was necessary to have a functional border and to facilitating the transit of critical services, people, and goods. For example, in the initial days with paper processing, it could take up to 14 days for data to be transferred and processed, and that data was critical to informing the day-to-day border measures, public health measures, and to providing data to our provincial and territorial counterparts for the administration of public health. So with the digitization of this data flow and the app, that amount of time decreased to 48 hours on average. So without the app, it would have been impossible to manage the increase that we saw for in May 2020, where we had about 1,000 travelers a day, to January 2023, where we were able to manage 50,000 travelers a day with processing time that dropped from 7 minutes per traveler to 2 minutes, a really important difference at both air and land borders.
Could you share and enlighten us in respect to the move from manual paper-based to digital? A lot of digitization has happened across government. Is this something that PAC had considered along with CBSA to bring the manual paper-based information online or to an app for collection prior to the pandemic?
I believe my CBSA counterparts have commented on this, but a digital border is very important for the flow of people and goods in a modern economy. So CBSA had indeed been considering the need to move to further digital processing at the border, but with the layering of public health measures and the importance of the border in delaying the entry of variants and monitoring the flow of travelers and of COVID-19 into Canada, it was really critical that those submissions be done in a digital way. So there was a very clear public health rationale for the need to move quickly in the development of the app. By the end, we had 60.3 million digital submissions before measures were lifted.
So my understanding around the time frame was that there was 47 days between the pandemic being declared to the launch of the ArriveCAN app. Has your department ever had to turn around a project this quickly, as it did with respect to going from manual to digital based?
This was an unprecedented time, and the speed of the response was really critical, given the speed at which the virus moves and the need to facilitate essential travel. The Public Health Agency of Canada did not have the expertise to develop an app of this nature, and for this reason asked the Canadian Border Service Agency to work on the development of the application, while the Public Health Agency focused on the analysis of the measures that needed to be put in place, the implementation of the Quarantine Act and the Orders of Council that really stood up the requirements that needed to operate at the border. It was a collaborative partnership. We worked very closely together in the governance of those arrangements.
Given everything that's happened, the discussion that we are having today, the report from the Auditor General, what do you think is the biggest lesson that PAC has learned from this experience that will help it move forward and perhaps give Canadians some reassurance that the issues and recommendations identified by the AG are being taken seriously?
It is clear that while this was an emergency that pointed to the need for us to rapidly develop tools that we did not have, that having in place the necessary governance with clear roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities, project budgets, and gating would have been essential to ensure that there was adequate oversight of the development of this application from the outset. As a result, we have put in place specific measures in our planning for future emergencies and pandemics to ensure that that is a standard operating procedure. And we are also taking measures to make sure that we have appropriate tools, standard operating procedures, and emergency responses that will allow us to train and ensure our personnel are able to deploy what were a wide range of new measures and tools that were required for COVID-19 in a more expedient way and to adapt them to future crises.
Thank you very much. Suivant, c'est Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés. Vous avez la parole pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, witnesses, for being here for another session of interesting questions following the report tabled by the Auditor General. Ms. Jeffrey, on several occasions during your remarks and when responding to questions here, you talked about the fact that the pandemic was an urgent situation and as if it were an excuse to act fast. Here, we have a contract from Health Canada, contracts that were signed with GC Strategies in January 2019 following a non-competitive process. The amount is 104,000. So we suppose that to go from one amount to another, there's a procurement process that should be respected. Could you provide us details with these types of contracts that PHAC or Health Canada had with GC Strategies? And if so, why was GC Strategies selected for these contracts? Thank you very much for the question. I can assure you that the Public Health Agency of Canada did not sign any contracts with GC Strategies. Never. You are confirming that it never happened. Public Health. For example, Mr. Cummins, what can you tell us when you were at the Treasury Board? What can you tell us about any contracts that could have been signed with GC Strategies when you were at the Treasury Board?
So I'm not aware of any contracts that the Public Health Agency of Canada has entered into, and so I don't have details of contracts that they would have had with other departments or agencies.
So you do not remember any such thing when you were at the Treasury Board?
So when I was at the Treasury Board Secretariat, I was in the program sector presenting TB submissions to Treasury Board ministers. I was not responsible for app development or contracting at that time.
D'accord, donc aucun souvenir. Parfait.
Very well. You don't remember anything. Okay, in that case, let's ask questions about the application. COVID Alert. What can you tell us about that application, COVID Alert?
So I can answer that. The COVID Alert app was developed as a tool to help limit the spread of COVID-19. It was downloaded about 6.9 million times. More than 58,000 users entered keys into that app. The idea was that it would provide an extra tool to allow Canadians to identify when they might have been exposed to COVID-19. The app was eventually sunset and retired on the 4th of April, given...
Possible de parler plus clairement.
Could you please speak a bit louder and more clearly, please? I'm sorry.
The COVID Alert app was a tool to help Canadians monitor any potential contact or exposure that they had. It supplemented the contact tracing that provinces and territories and local public health had put in place. The way the app worked was that one-time keys were generated when people tested positive through a PCR test for COVID-19, and those that downloaded the app that had been in proximity to those individuals received notifications that they could have been
Question très
exposed.
simple. Est-ce que vous étiez donc la...
Simple question. So PACP was responsible for this application. What was the responsibility of the different departments?
The agency was not responsible for the COVID Alert app, although we assisted in the development of the public health rationale and its functioning. The COVID Alert app was, I believe, initially developed by the Treasury Board Secretariat and in conjunction with Canadian Digital Services.
Combien de temps j'ai encore, Monsieur le Président?
How much time do I have left, Mr. Chair? 1 minute, 20 seconds. Thank you. Could you tell us about something else? It's still very vague. The arrival of Mr. MacDonald. He was transferred, I believe, from the Canada Border Services Agency to Health Canada. He was in Health Canada, yes. Well, let's let that go. Concerning the COVID Alert application, you had a role to play in that application, which was not widely used. And I know that some contracts concerning COVID Alert were attributed to GC strategies. Maybe Health Canada was not directly responsible. If you were involved in any way in the management of that application, how come you were not aware of the fact that a contract was awarded to GC strategies to develop that application?
The Public Health Agency was to help to inform the development of the app and the public health objectives of its development, namely to provide an additional tool for Canadians to have information to inform their risk management related to COVID-19. The evolution of the virus and the evolution of the testing methods being used in provinces and territories meant that once PCR testing was no longer the main method of informing Canadians that they had tested positive for COVID, that the app became of less utility.
Excusez-moi, vous répondez pas à la question. Je vous dis.
I'm sorry, you're not answering the question. I'm saying that the contract was awarded to GC Strategies. I'm sorry, your time is up. Your 6 minutes are up already. Mr. Desjardins.
Sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I too want to thank the Auditor General again for being present with us on this important topic. One, I think the Auditor General has heard my comments in the past that I believe is a failure on three fronts. One, a failure to deliver good management. 2, a failure to deliver the best value for Canadian taxpayer dollar. And 3, the generational failure and the consecutive failure of governments to finally address the critical underfunding of the public service that has created a vulnerability to which our public service then is forced to contract very expensive and risky management companies, or app development companies in this case,